And the moment you've used it against him, you have lost the man. You have lost the emotional intelligence that you went looking for.
Welcome to The Bear Perspective. I'm Bear Malik. I'm a student of life and I study psychology. I want to share with you some lessons and perspectives that I wish I could have learned a lot sooner in life.
There's been this surge of women seeking men with emotional intelligence. And I think the question is, I guess the question that's been formed around it works on a false premise. So it's assumed that men don't have emotional intelligence. It's assumed that they can't communicate their emotional intelligence. They won't share their feelings. And for someone who's not willing to share their feelings, the woman is not willing to partner with them, to mate with them, to date them, all of that stuff. And I think the question is formed incorrectly, because I believe most men are actually incredibly emotionally intelligent. More so than women in some cases. And why I say this is because of the perception that men aren't emotionally intelligent. And where does that come from? I'll tell you this. Men think about things into a depth that not many people realize. They consider their actions, they consider the ramifications, they consider their behavior far into the future and its effects and its impacts on their own life and the life of their partner, their family, and so on. But the thing is, they've been trained over their life. And what do I mean by trained? Similar to how you train a dog or a horse or something. And essentially it's, you give them a reward when they do something you like, and you punish them or remove something nice, remove a reward, like food, for example, when they do something that you don't like. And how men have been trained over time is they've been vulnerable. They've shown that emotional intelligence. They've opened up. And in most cases, bear in mind, I speak to a lot of men, and I speak from experience, that when that is done, it is almost certainly used against the man. That vulnerability is brought up during an argument. That vulnerability is attacked, is mocked, is belittled as weakness. Now, yes, obviously, men have egos in general, and men will feel hurt when that ego is challenged. But here's what happens when this happens consistently over a very long period of time. That emotional intelligence is slowly whittled away, or, to frame it more correctly, grows a thick skin like a callus. So thick that it's no longer visible, because the man will no longer be emotionally vulnerable with someone, won't speak about their fears, their worries, their perceived weaknesses. A man won't open up and you ask them, what are you thinking about? Nothing is the answer. Because to open that door is to open it up to mockery, to open it up to being belittled, for it to be stored in someone else's mind to then bring up during an argument later on, or be used near the end of a relationship as the final stab in the heart. It's a two-way street. Now, let me explain it this way. And in general, I would argue men are more emotionally intelligent than women. And I explain it like this. Imagine the hurt, the pain, the anger a woman goes through when a man does something, for example, like brings up your overreacting or you're behaving like your mother, the classic tropes. That's a weakness a woman has and has now been brought up during an argument and is being used against her. The pain, the anger, the intolerance to even speak those words. Now that's just to do with one thing, about how a woman does not want to be perceived as her mother. But men have tenfold more of those. From being vulnerable about protecting their partner, to being the breadwinner, to being able to provide for the family, to having physical strength, to having emotional strength, to having the intelligence and the wisdom to guide. That there are so many levels to things that men think about, care about, that get constantly attacked. And imagine that pain that a woman feels when her vulnerability is brought out into the light about her acting like her mother. I'm using that just as an example. Imagine that pain. Apply it tenfold to every vulnerability a man feels that has been constantly attacked. And then a man must build a thicker skin over it. It gets calloused, it gets harder, it gets shielded. Now, to the outside perceiver, this seems as silence. It seems as there's no one home. It seems like the man thinks of nothing. It comes across as emotional stupidity rather than emotional intelligence, and that there being the thing that women are looking for. Now, granted, one of the things I say is to not make your current partner pay for the sins of a previous relationship. Now, that takes work on both sides. If a man is being open, if a man is being vulnerable, do not use it against him. And the moment you've used it against him, you have lost the man. You have lost the emotional intelligence that you went looking for. So then why are women looking for emotional intelligence? Because they want someone to be vulnerable with them. They want someone to be open with them. In some cases, because it will give them more ammunition to use against the man and hold power over him. In some cases. But in most cases, it's because they want a life partner and they want someone who is going to be as open with them as they are willing to be open with their man. So how do you get past this hurdle? How do we change it? If the damage has already been done, if the callus has already formed over a man, over a man's emotional intelligence, over his heart, you need to whittle away at it. Create a trusting environment and make sure every single time a man has opened up to you in the beginning, testing the waters to see if this will be used against him, that you cherish that, protect it as much as the man wants to protect it. If he tells you one of his fears, it's a fear. Never use it against him. Protect that feeling, protect that fear as much as the man wants to keep it protected. And this works both ways. If a woman has opened up to a man, in my opinion, it seldom happens, but the man should protect it. And that's what a man generally would do. Pathological people aside, the ones with other mental conditions or other mental health conditions such as bipolar disorder or anger issues or some other form of pathology. Talking about the regular Joe, the everyday man, create a safe space for him. Not so much that he needs a safe space, that he's delicate, more that if you want the emotional intelligence, the vulnerability, the weaknesses to be visible to you as a partner, you need to give it the room to explore and be out there without getting hurt and without having to crawl back into a cave, shutting the door and not allowing anyone in. What does that look like day to day? As much as women want men to telepathically know what and how a woman is feeling, just be inherently empathetic to the woman and know that she has had a long and hard day and she needs a break at home from the children, from whatever. How about doing that the other way around? How about being empathetic towards the man if he has been out working all day, if he has been physically, emotionally exhausted from the day, from the week, from the month, from any of the life challenges that have happened in place. Pay him the courtesy of the empathy that you would expect in that moment. And give him the space, give him time to rest, give him time to recharge. Do all the things that you would expect him to do for you. Make him dinner. Give him drinks. Give him his own sanctuary, his own space. Seems that we've done a lot of that for women in general and under most circumstances, pathology aside. But it comes down to communication, communicating effectively. Now, here's how to communicate in a relationship in a way that is effective, a little bit structured maybe, but works. Seems to be a 3-step process. At the end of the day, when we're communicating, we are trying to indicate to people what our boundaries are, what our expectations are, what are the perceived expectations of an interaction. So communicate your expectations. Agree on the expectations. And now that you've drawn that line in the sand, you need to speak of the repercussions of the actions that would exceed or overstep those expectations. If you do X, I will do Y. Seems very tit for tat, but that's an oversimplification. If you come home later than 6 o'clock, dinner will be cold. I will not be cooking for you again. If your partner has an addiction problem, you no longer want to drink and they've been sober for years and they've fallen off the wagon. That's where you need to set your expectations. I do not expect you to fall off the wagon again. If you fall off the wagon, the consequences of these actions are this. And then the step 3 of this whole situation and communicating effectively is to follow through with the consequences and follow through with the ramifications of people's actions. It's hard to do. It's easier to say. But if someone comes home drunk and you have said, for the safety of me and my children, I do not want you to be drunk and I don't want you to be high, etc., I will move myself and my children to a safe space until you have sobered up. That's the expectation the first time it happens. If it happens again, you are no longer allowed at home. Go find another bed to sleep on for a week, for 2 weeks, for a month. And you need to follow through with it. And I say that because the people I've helped and spoken to in the moment agree and say, yes, this is what I will say, this is what I will do. And then don't follow through. Don't follow through with the conviction of the breach of the expectation. Which, guess what, does what? It enables the addict to continue drinking, to continue stepping over the boundaries, to continue doing what they want because they know there will be no consequences. Whereas if you can follow through with the consequences, if you can tell them, do the dishes. If you do not do the dishes, I will turn off the Wi-Fi. And the dishes aren't done. Follow through with it, even if it's at your own inconvenience. Perhaps find a way of doing it so that it doesn't impact you, maybe. Change the Wi-Fi password, for example. And it will not be turned back on, or you will not be given the new password to the Wi-Fi until the dishes are done, because that was the expectation that we agreed on. That was the boundaries that we had set, and you have exceeded them. This works with your children, obviously, as well. Tidy your room, make your bed. If you do not, there will be these consequences. It rarely needs to reach a shouting match. It rarely needs to get to an argument. If you can communicate your expectations effectively. So then with men, if you expect emotional intelligence, talk to him, but then also expect there to be consequences if his expectations have been breached, if you have stepped over the line in the sand for him. And for a guy, you can be open. You can say, hey, I'm willing to be open with you. I'm willing to be vulnerable with you. But if you use it against me even once, if my vulnerabilities that I have confided in you have been used against me to cause me pain, this relationship is over. And in all honesty, it will be. Because if both parties in that relationship want to have a safe, equal place in that relationship, and once that trust has been breached, one person in that relationship will shut down emotionally. And if that's not what both parties want, that relationship is essentially over, regardless of however long it takes for it to officially end. But it begins with the man shutting down, or it begins with the partner shutting down. They no longer open up. They no longer share their worries. They no longer share their hidden fears. Slowly being unable to be vulnerable with your partner, with whoever you're sharing your life with, can change to despising your partner. Because you don't like them anymore. They are not the person that you can share yourself with fully and wholly, which I think everyone deserves to some degree.